Hello and welcome to CDT day 133. I am recounting my time on trail from Monday, September 9th. So in yesterday's video I explained how I ran into a thunderstorm at my random camp underneath some big pine tree in a thunderstorm, and most of my stuff was wet. So we flash forward to today's date, September 9th, and I started the day out around 11 a.m. just waiting for the storms to stop. They went through all night long, and there was a lot of rain, to the point that it was coming through my rainfly. Water was just starting to seep through, because even with a waterproof rainfly, it still is enough to hold down some of this heavy stuff. So just everything I had was drenched. It was cold and miserable. So around 11 a.m. is when the rain finally stopped, and I was able to get moving. So I got out of my tent and just had to pack everything up, and it was soaked and gross, and everything was really cold. So I continue on, and luckily the sun breaks and finds a little spot. I happen to have an open exposed rock area, perfect place to dry stuff out. So I was able to lay everything I owned out and dried up about 90 to 95% of it. The only thing that was still damp was like one sock and the foot box of my sleeping bag, but I mean everything was in much better shape, so I felt great. Now this entire day was in like the mid 40 degrees, so it was still a chilly day, but if I kept my heart rate up, I was good to go. So topography, it's all kind of East Coast. If you're familiar with the East Coast, it's just a lot of forest. I mean, this is mostly pine forest, not a lot of deciduous trees, maybe some aspens, but the feel is the same, where you have kind of low rolling mountains, and anytime you get a little bit of a vista to look out, there's just green everywhere. And also it's a cloudy day, so that definitely helps with the feeling of East Coast. And there's a lot of undercast, you know, like those clouds that are kind of foggy and roll through the valleys of mountains. And it's really beautiful in its own right, and a really cool hike. So most of it kind of felt like a green tunnel, just walking through the forest all day, and then there's some climbs here and there, but nothing crazy, just a lot of pointless ups and downs, you know. But after drying everything out, I even tried to dry my phone out. I realized that it's not going to work, and it's still not working. So I said, crap. And then that's when I went to my GPS and found out that wasn't working. Crap. So luckily I spent so much time looking at these maps, because I'm pretty anal about it. I memorized like some of the major waypoints and most of the map itself. So I knew that in order to get to Helena, it was mostly north, but there were a couple cuts to the east. And so I knew if I'm going mostly north and mostly east, I'm doing okay. So I used my GPS as a compass to move me through all these unmarked junctions, because it is the CDT, so there are tons of unmarked junctions. And I seem to be moving pretty well through them, and you know, having no way of knowing if I'm going the right way until hopefully I see a marker or something, which I didn't for a long time. So I think I moved through about 5 or 6 junctions correctly, and then I got to the 7th one and felt I needed to take a right, because I felt like I was going more east than west, and it started turning south, and then it was due south, and then it was due south for like miles, and it never turned back east or north. So I look at my track record of my walking, and it looks like north, east, and then back down. It looked like a candy cane. So I said, crap, because I don't have a map, I don't even know if any of those previous 5 junctions were correct. You know what I mean? Like, just because I was in the general area doesn't mean that I was actually in the right place. So even if I just went back to that previous junction and just took the other turn, I could still be in the middle of nowhere. So I got nervous, for sure, a little scared, and I messaged my father, who could get access online to the maps. So I have the Garmin InReach, and I have 40 custom messages I can use a month before getting charged extra. So I messaged him and I said, hey, I'm in trouble. I need your help. Both my navigations have failed, and I don't know where I am. Am I on the CDT? Am I on a trail? Where do I go? And he said, you're on Thunderbolt Creek, go north to Cottonwood Lake, and there should be a CDT junction around there. So I went north, back to the junction I turned on incorrectly, and went the other direction, and not a quarter mile after, pretty close, there was a CDT marker at another junction. It said finally they mark it. So frustrating that that trail was not marked the way it was. But luckily, and I give them a lot of credit, the rest of the trail for about, I think, 25 miles was marked well enough for me to get all the way to McDonald Pass, which takes you into Helena, without having to contact my dad again. So that worked out pretty well. I did have some more unmarked junctions, but they're pretty obvious. Like, you have a pretty well-worn road like this, and then you'd have like a side road. I mean, there's nothing there, but kind of like a side road going off, and it doesn't seem as well-worn. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the wrong way to go, but it helps, and luckily it got me to where I needed to go. So beautiful forest. I caught some nice views on some mountaintops because I did climb some mountains, and just spectacular. A lot of like broken up kind of shale rock, and kind of has that orangey haze to it, and hop up on there and it's just these rolling green forested hillsides with some of that tan grassy knolls as well thrown in there for contrast. It's very beautiful. And then I ended up finding another hiker on there named Flip Flop, and he gave me a little bit of information on the section ahead. And, I just asked him, do you know if there's any like weird junctions or anything like that? And I didn't want to follow him all the way to town because people are trying to do their own hike. They don't need me riding on their backs just because I wasn't prepared enough. So I just asked him for some info, got some good info on potential difficult to spot junctions, and it worked out great. And ended up camping in a little pine forest, which was a beautiful spot. It was flat, it was up on a hilltop, so there wasn't much water, so I just conserved my water, and that worked out just fine. Another decent sized day, I believe. I'm not going to know exactly what the distance is, but I can figure that out with the stats, because I did roughly about 6 miles of off-trail mileage because of my screw-up with these junctions. So I definitely did a lot more miles than the trail allows for, and so it ended up being a pretty big day, even though I didn't make too many miles. So I was alone again for most of this day, apart from that one meeting with Flip Flop. So let me get some stats for you from today's hike. Yeah, so on trail, today's hike was only about 15.5 miles with 2,900 feet of climbing. But the realistic amount of walking that I likely did was about 22 miles and probably about 3,500 feet of climbing. There's a lot of extra climbing and distance thrown in there, so it was a decent day for walking. And also having to take so much time to sit down and message my dad and communicate with him, and then also the time at every single junction just trying to use directional awareness, memorization of maps, and situational awareness to figure out where to go. Every time I hit a junction, it took time away. So doing 22 miles worked out decently well. But unfortunately, I was trying to get within about 5 to 10 miles of the road so I could get into Helena real quick in the morning. But this left me over 20 for the next day, so it was a big long day. But that's for tomorrow's video. Tomorrow's video from September 10th will be the last video that I will be recounting. Starting September 11th, I will be back on trail, because that's where I am right now, and we'll get some trail video. So I'm calling that the end of CDT day 133, and we'll pick it back up tomorrow with my recount of September 10th. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.